a stance of resistance is very different than a stance of complacency or thriving or, you know, any of these other things that we could. There's so many options of what we could be, like be the fucking cactus. God, I'm using fuck a lot today, but
fuck
the
yeah.
other thing.
Hello and welcome to Fuck Yeah, the podcast where we say fuck yeah to resistance. I am Robin, one of your hosts, here with Sarah. Well, not necessarily here. Sarah, you are far away.
This is the furthest we've ever been away from each other while recording.
Yeah. Thank you, technology.
I know.
So, do you have any fuck yeahs right now?
Well, I'm in Costa Rica.
Exactly. Yay.
I am in the jungle.
Yeah.
It is. We are having major storms here. So, you know, kind of adjusting expectations as far as what this week is going to be, which actually feels like really nice to not be holding expectations tightly and just to be in a space where I'm very go with the flow right now.
Yeah.
So I'm teaching at a retreat, the Shameless Sex Couples Retreat, and doing a lot of embodiment work. We're staying near Manuel Antonio National Park, and we're right, like I have a view of the ocean over the trees.
Wow.
And it's so humid here that the floors are kind of constantly wet.
Wow.
And I have never been to Costa Rica before. And
I haven't either. It's such a dream. I would love to go.
I'm like, I get it now. I totally get why everybody wants to come here. I had not done international travel, period, in a long time. Like my passport was definitely expired, but I hadn't done international travel by myself since I was 20.
Oh, wow.
So I had a big bout of anxiety the night before I flew about everything that could possibly go wrong. And also, like, I have one of my checked bags is just full of teaching. So I've got like a whole bag of kink stuff. I've got the gold genitals that you made for one of our shoots. I've got all these vibrators with me, and I'm like, what is going to happen when I get to Costa Rica? Am I going to get harassed? And every person I encountered at the airport, I got in fairly late, was so welcoming, so helpful. I got to the hotel really easily, and then we took a shuttle. We're about 3 hours from San Jose. So we took a shuttle and we arrived yesterday at the beach, and I just can't wait to see a sloth.
Oh, yeah, right. So Sarah, we have not caught up since the big.
Yeah, but before we, talk about our life-changing election that happened, I'd love if we could put as many fuck yeahs into the world as possible.
Oh, that's right. You know what? I do have a good fuck yeah.
What's giving you a fuck yeah?
Tomorrow night, I'm going to see Bob the Drag Queen.
Oh, I saw that show is coming to town. How fun.
Yeah, I got some tickets for Pony for his birthday. And I'm just super excited because I've, since we went to go see All Stars and I started really getting into Drag Race, I mean, it's like on constant play. And like, I would love sometime to do like a whole Drag Race episode because I have so many hardcore feelings, including someone who I think you had mentioned to me. I think you had mentioned a while ago. I can't wait for you to see Evie Oddly.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the best experience because it's been on so much. And, there's some mature content on that show, but it's also lighthearted and it's sexual. It's not like violent or anything like that. It's just like, and almost all of it is in coded language. There's not
Mm.
that much that isn't like coded. So I actually think like watching with kids, like there's a lot of things where they just don't even know, like all the talk of like tops and bottoms and all of this stuff. And they don't know what they're talking about yet anyway. So the kids have been watching it more because it's just been on, and Mars has gotten into it. And we were
Mm.
watching the drag race that had Evie Oddly in it, and I didn't know, spoiler alert, this is a spoiler. It's
Skip
like a
ahead, skip
4-year-old,
ahead.
5-year-old spoiler, but Evie wins, and I didn't know it was going to happen. And so I was just telling like Mars how much I love Evie, like the 3-boobed dress with the 3 butts and the 3
Yeah.
fingers and all this stuff. I just loved it so much, and her laugh and just like who she is as a person. I'm like, I want to like be with Evie Oddly, I'm like, I want her in my life. I love her so much. And so we were watching the finale, and I didn't know she was going to win. And then when she won, like me and Mars were just flipping out like it
Yeah,
was a recent
yeah.
finale. So, and now Mars can't stop talking about Evie Oddly and wants to watch all the drag race and everything. And I'm
That's
like,
so
oh, my
great.
dreams are coming true.
That kind of Midwest crew of drag queens are total weirdos, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be your crew, I
Yeah.
think, for sure.
Yeah. I always like the weird ones. So yeah, I'm excited to see Bob though. Comedy queen. They're like, there's the
Yeah.
weird queens, the comedy queens, and the beauty queens, like the pageant
I
queens.
think Bob also paved the way a bit for the weird
Mm-hmm.
queens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like Bob's drag is so far out there, but it did, I think, crack open a space
Mm-hmm.
for, I mean, I think Bob's drag is really beautiful, but it's Bob's physicality is so different. Their blackness is
Yeah.
so built into all of their drag. So I think Bob really kind of created a space for other styles of drag
Mm-hmm.
to come into the mainstream. Not that they haven't always existed,
Right.
but like Bob winning, spoiler alert, drag race was so huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was following Bob before I got into Drag Race. It was like Bob and Trixie and Katja I was like pretty aware of because of TikTok and stuff.
Yeah.
And Monet Exchange. And so now it's nice to see them, how they kind of came up, at least through that part, through the kind of like
Yeah.
public television world.
Yes,
So,
yeah. I mean, Bob is drag royalty. I saw Bob in the early days as part of, I think it was an Outfest event.
oh, yeah.
And my God, she was just incredible. And
Yeah.
then last year, or was it this year, seeing her as the MC of Madonna's tour.
Yeah. Did you see Madonna?
Yeah. I think I talked about it on the podcast.
Shut up.
Yeah. It was amazing. And Bob was fucking incredible in the
Yeah.
original Vogue costume. I mean, obviously not the original, a remade Vogue,
Right.
and then was an MC throughout the whole show. And I really appreciated it because Madonna has always had
Yeah.
roots in the drag scene, and I think was really given a lot of permission with I mean, some people could say that she really appropriates a lot
Right.
of things, but I think that she sees the New York queer club scene, like I think that that was her world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think Vogue was an homage.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can also be like both, it can be appropriation and it
Yeah.
can be publicizing something and elevating something at the same time. Like Madonna
Totally.
is complicated, but I
For
do
sure.
like, well, also to be public in the public eye for so long and to be
Yeah.
like tippy top for so long. But I do think that Bob created some legitimacy for Madonna not that she needs to be legitimized, but it's like in this era at this specific time, and like her going off on her like bizarre TikToks and everything during the pandemic. And like I felt like really losing grip with,
Mm-hmm.
with the
How can you stay
base.
connected to
I
reality
don't know. I
when
don't think
you
it's
live in
possible.
a world that is so, I mean, I guess some people do it, right? But yeah, it was showing for sure
I
where
mean,
you're
it's
like,
modern
"Oh,
day
Madonna's lost it."
royalty,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how you can tell what reality is after a while,
Mhm.
and then she was
Mhm.
isolated from people that were probably like yes men anyway, and sycophants and stuff. And so it's just like, how do you do that? How do you stay? But Bob, I think, is like a grounding in a certain
Yeah.
way for that show
Yeah.
and everything. And I've seen bits of it on TikTok and stuff, and I'm just like, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Bob was so good. Actually, that kind of segues me into something that I wanted to talk to you about or to share with listeners because, it's pretty bleak,
Mm-hmm.
the world that we are in right now, where Trump can get elected for a
Mm-hmm.
second term.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been noticing on this trip that there is something kind of magical about stepping outside of your reality
Yeah.
or having it challenged by newness.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the same way that like anything and like too much of anything is not a good thing, right?
Right.
So you see folks like Madonna, I think Beyonce too, right? Like the extreme capitalism that she promotes is just unfortunate. And if you get too far away from reality, it can be problematic. But
Right.
there has been something about leaving
Mm-hmm.
um, and being in a completely different place in the world that reminds me that the world keeps going.
Yeah.
And especially being in nature like I am right
Mm-hmm.
now, like the earth has seen so much
Yeah.
human devastation,
Mm-hmm.
stupidity, violence, hatred, oppression, and continues to thrive in whatever ways are still possible for our earth to
Mm-hmm.
thrive and like to show off, like all of these amazing sounds that are here. And of course, this is like an amazing privilege of mine to be able to come to Costa Rica, to have been asked to come and teach at this retreat, and possibly something that would not have been accessible to me, right? Had I tried to do this trip on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's important for us to step out of our day to day routines
Yeah.
when we feel really overwhelmed by what
Mm-hmm.
is happening in the world. And that doesn't mean you have to fly across the world, but like, is there a lake near you that you can go and visit for a day trip?
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a beautiful desert that you can go and stare at? Like, is there something in nature that is within reach where you can take, I would even say, like, take a weekday, not like a
Mm-hmm.
weekend, and just fucking go there and
Yep.
see that it is still there and that it is still okay, and that you can put your body into that body of water, or something to ground into a larger sense of history,
Mm-hmm.
humanity, and like zoom out a little bit. The zoom
Mm-hmm.
out has been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, also, like, girl, take advantage of this opportunity and recharge because there is a fight ahead and you
Right.
need to be fucking resourced.
Yeah. Yeah. And we may not have those opportunities coming up. It just depends on how everything goes down, you know. Um, like I was listening about a short history of the Spanish Civil War. And it was talking about how the people of Madrid fortified Madrid, and they were considered the 15th battalion. There was 14 battalions, and they were considered the 15th because they just took every piece of wood and furniture that they could find and made barricades and locked themselves in place for 4 years. 4 years before they've, lost that war.
Mm.
And it's just like, and then they had 40 years of a dictatorship, which is bonkers, bonkers.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you just don't know when or how things are going to change at any moment in your life,
Yeah.
even just around like the relationships you have, the people you depend on, the things that we consider secure and safe can actually change at any moment. And that's just not to be like scary about it, but just another reason to go out and enjoy those things if and while you can.
Yeah, there's I'm trying to look it up right now actually. Oh, maybe it wasn't sent to me. Okay. There are some uh publishers
Mm-hmm.
that are offering free books right now. They're PDFs, like they're ebooks, but
Mm-hmm.
AK Press, and then there's one other, if I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. Independent publishers offering some of their books on organizing
Mm.
tactics, particularly like Black civil rights or abolitionist thinkers and writers
Mm-hmm.
and activists. So look around because there are a lot of free resources right now in terms of reading up on, like, this isn't something that we as white millennials have
Mm-hmm.
experience. Like, I'm saying you and I, right?
Right, right. It's nice that you call
Like
me millennial. That's sweet.
well, an early a young Gen Xer,
Yeah.
but like we haven't lived through this personally. Like, we haven't had to fight in this way before, but there are plenty of people who are still alive who
Mm-hmm.
have had to fight for their rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and then obviously, if you look further back in history, you can find lots of inspiration about revolutionary movements.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's really important that we, look to Black activists in the United States. If you want to look, to the USSR
Mm.
or, I'm sure there are contemporary Russian writers who are speaking about their activism in Russia right now. Like, we're going to have to get equipped
Mm-hmm.
so that we ensure that the things that are important to us that we're really going to fight for and make it difficult to have taken away.
Yeah. 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 And, this brings up something that I wanted to talk about in general is I was looking at the exit polling around the
Okay.
election.
How was that for
And
you? How's your
I
heart?
mean, well, the first glance, I'm like, wow. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And I have a whole thing that I want to say about this around actually taking people at face value and being like, okay, I see you. I see what your morality and your priorities are. And I'm going to just accept that and not be like, oh, they didn't understand tariffs, or oh, if they only understood what this was, and blah blah blah. But I want to get into that in a minute. But first, the exit polling. So they broke down what's the word, demographics in a lot of different ways. And do you know what the highest demographic for voting for Kamala was?
Black
If
women.
there's Black women, but there's one even higher than that, which is Black people over the age of 65. They voted
Wow.
93%. Black women was 91%. So very
Mm-hmm.
close. But I think it speaks to what you're talking about, where the people that have been in this struggle the longest, who know what and how bad it can actually be, And that, it's in the further back you go into history, the worse it gets in this country. But it's like the people that have experienced the most of that oppression, voted for Kamala. Then Black women. And then what is the third highest percentage level for voting for Kamala, do you think? Behind over 65 Black people and behind Black women. They're at 86%.
86% voting for Kamala Harris. I mean, I know it's not white women.
No, fucking white women. So disappointing.
Incredibly. I know it's not Latino men.
I will say it'll make you proud. It might give you some pride.
Queer people of some kind.
Yes. So, and I was thinking about this in the angle of, okay, who are our safe people out there? Who are the people that have our backs, who are looking towards progress and freedom and, moving forward in this world instead of this fucking regression? It is older Black people, Black women, queer people. Black men are up there too, as far as they did 85%. So right behind queer people, And I think these are also the people that we need to be looking towards when it comes to how to fight the powers, how to
and
resist.
I guess like one thing I just want to add into this mix, and this was a thing that gave me hope, because I really don't want to get into any blame games around, like, I know it's not white women, and I know it's not Latino men. There's been a lot of hate towards Latinx voters as blowback from this election. And the thing that one of the takeaways of my deep dive that I did into some political analysis after the election is the New York Times journalist who's been, like, Kamala Harris has been his beat for the last 2 years. And he was breaking down that, where he felt like the Democrats went really wrong with this election. And it being not holding a primary, right? And that the primary is where we actually have the opportunity to move the party to the left. But that what was coming out of the focus groups and what he's been hearing for, 2 years on the trail with her is that people have wanted change. And so the people who were voting for Trump, I mean, some of them are racist fucking assholes who are already rich and just want to get richer. But that we didn't offer, particularly to working class voters, a lot of whom are Latino voters, any sort of tangible change. Because even though you're saying to people like inflation rates have actually dropped, the fact is that there are real economic issues and lifestyle issues that are affecting people. The cost of existing is so high. And so it doesn't matter if it's like, oh, but actually, employment has improved and inflation has gone down, because that's not what people are feeling. And like the corporatization of the world has made it so that we're just like creating these huge economic divides. And I found a little bit of empathy in that. That if you've got somebody who's out there, I mean, and the Trump campaign felt for a long time that they had the numbers, because essentially, like, they had all these hateful fucking messages that they were putting out there. But one of the messages that he led every fucking rally and all their ads with was like, it's going to be different than what you've had. And people were like, I need something different.
Yeah, but is like mass deportations different? Is stripping your rights different? Is that like the kind of different that you're looking for? And I personally, I, I have so little space for arguments around what the Democrats did wrong,
Mm.
because who Trump is
Mhm.
and what he
Mhm.
stands for
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
so blatantly morally defunct and dripping with just awfulness that I feel like, to me, I don't care. I don't care if it was like Biden running again and he's like getting wheeled up to the podium and having someone else speak for him. Like, I don't understand. Well, I do. For me, it's a moral issue at this point around how you see humanity and how you think people should be treated. And that the economy is like, it's beyond all of that, you know?
But I think that there is a little bit of a divide, or like a perception of the Democratic Party is becoming elitist and is no longer for working class people. And like, I don't know if you've heard of this ad that Trump ran, and it's really upsetting to me. But from a messaging perspective, it was really fucking effective. Kamala is for they, them. Trump is for you. So you are tapping into so much misunderstanding around the quote unquote woke movement in that tagline, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
are tapping into people who are like, yeah, you know what? All this like gender diversity and expansion of rights, like, it's actually kind of delivered to me in a way that it goes over my head a little bit and it makes me feel stupid. And I don't like feeling stupid. And I think that that is something like, I think we are like really clear, right, on all of the harm that he is going to do to this country and like, families are going to be torn apart,
Mm-hmm.
hate crimes are going to increase,
Mm-hmm.
the economy is not going to get better.
Mm-mm.
Like, it is it's going to it's going to be rough in ways that are going to be hard to anticipate. But he tapped into fear that people have,
Yes.
fear that the world is leaving them behind,
Mm-hmm.
fear that they're stupid and don't understand, fear that they're not going to be able to pay their bills or feed their families. And that is something that we, I think, have to, honor as like, that shit is really, I mean, that like brings out the survival stuff in people, right?
I I think it's very generous to call it tapping into the fear. I do think that's ultimately the underlying emotion, but I think what he tapped into is the hate.
Yeah. Yep.
And I
Yeah.
that ad that you're talking about taps into hate. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
we know that you do not like all of this queer stuff. We know
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, to me, it's like having your identity part of an oppressive structure is what he tapped into. And
Yeah.
for those of us that want to remove our identities from the structure of how we're treated on the streets, how we're legislated for or against our own bodies, that's what people are trying to break out of. And he tapped into the fear that people have over that and how it's going to affect their personal identities within a hierarchical structure. And that's where I think the hate comes in. So I'm for you. You're not a they, them, is what it
Mm-hmm.
implies. You're
Mm-hmm.
not one of those
Mm-hmm.
queerdos. You're not one of those fucked up
Mm-hmm.
people that think that gender is something that you choose, or that's like, it's like, so for me, I'm just in this spot now where I'm like, okay, I see where you're at, like if that ad was effective on a person, okay, I see where you're at. you really have a lot of us versus them. I mean, that's the most othering kind of ad you could have, right? It's
Yeah.
like, we are different from those people, and I'm for you, not them.
Mhm.
Actually using the word them, you know, it's like
Mhm.
so many
Mhm.
layers to that
There
word at
it's
this point.
it is so like I mean that ad, that verbiage is
Yeah.
so layered and
Yeah.
I think gets at the heart of all because was this a racist result? Like what does this confirm the underlying racism and misogyny that
Mm-hmm.
this country is reliant on?
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Does it confirm that people are really struggling to get
Yes.
by and
Yeah.
fearful that there is no future where they can have this kind of American dream?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's add the layer of othering onto
Right.
this so that I seed like the Trump campaign seeds this idea of like, but look at these rights that other people are getting. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, that means that something is being taken away from you. And it is,
Right.
you
Scarcity.
know, it's scarcity mindset. And I do have to say, if I focus too much on the fact that 70 million people voted for Trump, it makes me want to curl up into a ball and weep.
Mm-hmm.
And that benefits them. Like
Right.
that benefits the fucking wannabe dictator who wants us tired,
Yeah.
wants us worn down, and wants
Right.
us not taking to the streets and
Mm-hmm.
fighting his policies, wants us not paying attention. Like he wants people, except for his supporters, to stop tuning into media.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he'll slowly start taking away the powers of the free press, right? Like we know what the playbook is.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So pay attention, recharge where you can, because being tired all the time and tuning out and not having any capacity to pay attention to what's happening and like where what issues are under attack at that particular moment, like where your voice needs to be heard, where your efforts need to go, like that is not going to benefit us.
Right.
That's going to benefit a dictatorship.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's so nuts is I feel like there's, of course, we see patterns in our own life. It's just like part of being human, like recognizing these patterns and everything. But the process that I've gone through in my marriage
Mm,
and the disillusionment, and then the point that I've
mm,
gotten to now, actually, it reflects a lot of what has gone on with the past three elections, where it was like, in the 2016 election afterwards, I mean, I was dumbfounded, shocked, devastated, devastated. I could not fucking believe that. I was like, this is the world we live in. I can't believe it. And then it's like, oh, well, they didn't understand this. They didn't know who he was and blah, blah, blah. And they voted for him because of
mm,
this and that or whatever.
mhm, mhm.
And we just need to be able to get the message out there better. And if they just know us and all of this stuff, then they'll come around. And it's like, I've learned recently about, not only do we, you know, we hear about projection, how we project kind of our negative beliefs onto other people. But we also project our positive beliefs and our moral
Mm,
beliefs onto other people.
mhm,
And the
mhm.
same thing as in my marriage, like when I came up against certain things that I thought would be obvious no brainers, and there was an incredible amount of like stonewalling and resistance towards it, I was like shocked, and then was just like, oh, he just doesn't understand. I just need to get him to understand, because deep down we have the same beliefs, we have the same core
Mm,
morality.
mhm,
And
mhm.
literally, after years of therapy and everything, it turned out that it was, no, his core beliefs are actually different than mine. And that was a big grieving period for me. And now that I'm out of the grieving period of that part of the relationship, I have a real punk rock attitude towards it where I'm like, okay, I see you now. I accept who you are. I don't believe the same thing and I'm not going to give into it. And we need to part ways at this point. And when it comes to fucking America and the 70 million people that voted this way this time around, I was not shocked. I was disappointed, but
Mm.
also I have this attitude of like, okay, I see you. I see where you're at. Even if you're not, even if you're voting on economics, and you're like just hoping that he's not going to do horrible racist things or, sexist or homophobic things, I see where the moral issue is because I don't think anybody can say they don't know what Trump stands for at this point. You
Mm-mm.
know who he is. You
Mhm.
know who he is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everybody in this country. And you still chose to vote for him. And so I'm like, okay, I see you. I'm not going to pretend like I can convince you of something else. I know now what I'm up against. This country is so fucking hateful.
Yeah.
There's like we started off with brutal, disgusting genocide, added a whole bunch of like human bondage and torture into it, and we are trying to claw our way out of that for centuries. And that we're at this point, I guess, is pretty good. But I think I'm starting to believe in evil at this point. Like I used to be like, oh, we're all, I don't think babies are born bad, but I think that there's like really hateful forces in the world. And I'm ready to accept that it's not a misunderstanding at this point.
Well, and the other element on top of like what you just described as far as the formation of the nation is
Mm-hmm.
that we've created an ideology, a national ideology of self-interest.
Right. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got people who are like, "Oh, but it might be a little bit better for me.
For me.
So I'm going to push aside all of these negative consequences for other people."
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a real we have such a break in our national identity in terms of not having any kind of recognition of our history.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've never had the national reckoning
Yeah.
around how this country was formed and what that means in terms of the system. So going back to what you're describing, that Black folks over 65 are
Mm-hmm.
the ones who that's the demographic that voted most strongly for Kamala Harris. It's like those folks know what Jim Crow, like living under
Mm-hmm.
Jim Crow, is like,
Segregation. Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, all right, so we're going to
Yeah.
do this again.
Right.
Great, great.
Yeah.
So history repeats when there isn't a reckoning around,
Mm-hmm.
hey, did that actually serve us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that who we want to be as a country?
Mm-hmm.
Because when the focus becomes self-interest,
Right.
then you can be like, you know what, the interest rates are going to be much better. And right now, for me in my life, that's more important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like even the conversation about like reparations, for example. We've
Right?
just started talking about reparations for fucking slavery,
Yeah.
for fucking being kidnapped and forced and just so many atrocities, and it's like we're just now getting to that conversation where we can bring it up publicly. And it goes to that thing what you're talking about. It's like, all these like white people like, well, I didn't personally do that. So why
Mm-hmm.
should I have to And it's
Mhm.
like as though it's coming right out of your pocketbook, and as though it's not, as though a reckoning for what has happened in this country is not all of our responsibility, you know, to move forward. It's like not even a simple apology is on the table. It's maddening that to feel like we're so far behind already and to have this shitty orange creature pull us further back, when we're already so unsatisfyingly not progressive enough in my mind. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only opportunity here is the system is coming down in a lot of ways. Like,
Mhm.
we don't know exactly how that's gonna play out,
Mhm.
but, the systems that we have become accustomed to on a federal level are not going to look the same come 2025.
Right.
And so possibly the opportunity is to envision what are ways that you would like to exist within your community? Like, what are
Yes.
changes that you would like to see on a local level or at your park that is down the street, right? Like, what are those little pockets of visioning that you can do freed up from what currently is? Because what currently is gonna fucking change no matter what. So, what about imagining some different possibilities that don't involve compromise, that don't involve like what you think you can get out of like your city council or your like parent group or whatever? I'm always going to be trying to find an opportunity, an opening, right?
Mhm. Yes. Yes.
And the only thing I can see is that if the system is coming down,
Mhm.
then and change, even though it is completely out of our hands, is coming,
Mhm.
then what about like stop compromising in what you think is possible or what you
Right.
want in the world? Start actually asking, demanding, using whatever is within your sphere of influence to put some energy towards change that you'd actually like to see.
Yes.
Get involved in something that feels good to you
Yeah.
or that makes you feel like you're giving back in some kind of way. It doesn't mean it's going to be a huge period of like major wins, major progressive wins. Like
Right.
we're not in a moment where we're going to see all these like expanded rights.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be wins that we're going to be able to achieve on smaller scale.
Right. And I think that when we're looking at the arc of history, a lot of times we get focused on how bad it can go. But there's the other arc of the progress that can come after the horror, and the changes that can be made after this sort of thing, or during. It's like, where do we want to be in history? I think as Americans, we have not had an extreme kind of fight in on our property, basically.
Right.
There was like Pearl Harbor, but other than that, and then there is the Spanish American War, but that was like really us just like being awful.
Taking land.
Yeah, just like pulling a Ukraine Russia situation. But uh, I think it's important to think about and study not only what the oppressive forces are doing in these horrible historic moments, but what the resistance is doing as well. And so, what I'm thinking and what I'm hoping for is that we have a real Weimar Republic kind of vibe that I've already been feeling in our community, where it's because I've been throwing a lot of parties that have been hitting it hard. And I feel like this last Halloween one, the Witches New Year one that I just did, I felt like so joyously rebellious about it and so happy to have these people here at my house, and it felt very good. And I've been feeling it in other ways, like there's, like the queer sex party space that opened up recently in Los Angeles. That's
FWB. I
yes,
just want to call
FWB.
it out in case anyone wants to try to find it.
Yes, FWB, and just a lot of like kink parties that are like exploding right now. A lot of performance art, bonkers art going on right now. There's like I feel like the nightclubs are full of like performance, just radical things going on. And I don't know. I think it's a time to make art, to be in community, to like really band together, because if and or when the shit hits the fan, we will be very dependent on each other and these networks more than ever. So it's like I think about like the French Resistance. You have to have these connections and doing these things underground. We will not be able to be connecting via the internet or whatever. Who knows what it'll be? Who knows? But it's like,
Yeah.
who do we want to be in this situation? And I would rather be, hiding people, part of a resistance, standing out, or, doing things covertly to undermine an oppressive system and fail at it than be on the winning side of fear mongering orange monster.
Or just like melt and disintegrate into
Mm-hmm.
despair, right? And I think like
Or
one of the things,
complacency.
yes, complacency. Yes, yes, yes. It's such actually a toxic thing. So two things just came to mind as you were talking. Kind of a similar energy. My family is from Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandmother was a huge influence in my life. And the women in the family were all progressive, the men have all become
Right.
Republicans. And but my grandmother was an Ann Richards Democrat
What does
in
that mean? I
Texas.
need to know
So
it. I know
Ann
the name.
Richards was just a spitfire. She was a Democrat governor
I
of
know. And
Texas.
yes, is she the one that like
And
stood her ground in Congress forever?
well,
Or
and
the
her daughter is now the like head of Planned Parenthood.
yes,
Look her
yes,
up. She's amazing. But she's coming out of this pretty rugged, male dominated,
yeah,
conservative environment. And so like, the women that my grandmother played cards with and that I sat with as a child were like pretty progressive, empowered women, right? In this environment
mm-hmm.
that was, like they were cactus growing in this environment,
Right,
right? They
right,
had to be spiny and
yeah,
tenacious and spunky because it wasn't, you had to really fight to,
yeah.
be a progressive woman in Texas. And
And I
that,
would just say metaphorically with the cactus, just real quick, because they're also sucking up the very little water that they have and
yes,
inflating themselves, but then protecting themselves. And I think that's an important part.
yes,
Like making sure you're protecting
yes.
your resources and sense of self. Like, what are you protecting? But please
Yeah,
go
well,
ahead.
and think about those kinds of images. Like if
Mm-hmm.
when you're meditating, or we've talked about like creating your pleasure garden. Like maybe your
Mm-hmm.
pleasure garden needs to be filled with different things during this time, because a stance of resistance is
Mm-hmm.
very different than a stance of complacency or
Yes.
thriving, or any of these other things that we could. There's so many options of what we could be. Like be the fucking cactus.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm using fuck a lot today. But the
Fuck yeah.
other thing, the other thing that I thought of is like last night we did an opening ritual for this retreat, and trying to get people really grounded in a sense of choice,
Mm-hmm.
not consent, because consent is
Mm,
in my mind kind of agreeing to something that someone else potentially wants.
right.
Really like getting embodied in choice, like knowing this week when you're here at this sex retreat that like you have the choice to say yes or to say no, to get comfortable with the maybes, right? And as per usual, like when we're debriefing and some folks are describing that like the no felt hard and that like they did not like the feeling of the no in their body, as like we're getting comfortable with like what does yes feel like and what does no feel like.
Right.
And I wasn't surprised by the, ooh, it was a little harder to be in the no space, right? We're in this like
Hmm.
very cushioned, lovely environment right now. And something that I'm noticing about myself is like the no feels really good right now. I don't
Yes.
usually want to be angry. I don't
Hmm.
usually want to be in a rage space. But that no stance serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And if you want to be part of the resistance right now, getting grounded in your no,
Hmm.
using your rage for good, like these are actually really positive applications of that kind of energy or that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so it is possible to be in that stance in a way that does not break you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it is like we're taught so much about anger and expression of anger as being a bad thing. And I think that it can be a bad thing, especially when, because anger is a protection mechanism, right? But sometimes people are protecting their ego or their sense of superiority, and anger is abusive in those cases. But it's like if our anger is used to protect our rights and our place on this earth and our sense of well-being and our community and our kids and our friends and our family, then it becomes this positive thing that has almost like this heartwarming feeling in a certain way where I am
Mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm.
like, you know what? No, you know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I will say I've been proud of California on a certain level of I'm glad that, Newsom is out there being like getting ready for the onslaught that might be coming towards California. Sometimes, I mean, I've been fantasizing about California seceding from the United States for like decades,
I
but
know, me too.
I and I was like, I saw a thing on TikTok where they were talking, and I've known this for a while, but it's like the it, the California economy is, if we were separate from the United States, would be bigger than Germany's GDP, bigger than the UK's GDP. We would be the fourth biggest economic power in the world on our own. And I'm like, but you know what? Oregon and Washington can come. That's cool. But I just,
New Mexico also. Like, I think
but
that
the
there could be
problem
a
is we have to
way.
skip over.
I know.
I've thought
We have
about
to
this a
create a
lot.
bridge over Arizona
I
because
was literally like a
New
rainbow bridge.
Mexico.
Like,
Yes, yes. New Mexico went the right way. Andrea and I were like, oh, thank goodness, because we
I
really
know.
love
I love New Mexico.
spending
And
time there.
I was literally watching the election being like, Arizona, if you don't go blue, you're out because you're our bridge to New Mexico. And I'm sorry, New Mexico. But if Arizona, we can't carry that bitch with us. She's toxic. But I'm like, it might be that these horrible moments have to happen in order for there to be a rupture in, like you're saying, this kind of complacent system. The Democrats do represent more of the same and this really slow movement forward, this grinding of the bureaucracy. And like, we like Obamacare was a big deal to happen. And that was the first time I had healthcare that wasn't Planned Parenthood,
Yeah.
And it was like, it was like but it's such a slow grind and it's such a bureaucratic kind of thing. Like if we were to do reparations like through the Democratic Party, it would just be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and maybe this is what it takes for us to go through who knows what kind of horror in order to get to a better place. I don't know. Like right now, I'm in the middle of a divorce. It fucking sucks. I have to tell my children soon that all of this is going to go down. I don't want to go through any of this. It would be easier to just stay and to
Mhm.
live in a unhappy
Mhm.
kind of
Mm.
shitty what is it called,
Mm.
dishonest harmony, of codependency, of just oppressive structures in our
A
own homes.
dishonest harmony. Oh my gosh, it's kind
Yes.
of like a great way to describe how the country's been held together. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
it's how
yeah.
most families are held together. At least like, the white Midwestern waspy kind of families that I come from, where you're not talking about it and everybody knows it's fucked up. But if you bring it up, you're the problem for bringing it up. And that's actually what happened in my relationship, where it's like, why can't you just let it go? And I'm like, because it is fundamentally wrong. It's like, why are we living like this if neither one of us are happy? So it's almost like you have to go through this horrible breakup in order to get to a spot where you can be happier. And look, I'm not under any illusion that California doesn't have incredible problems and everything. And I don't know that this is actually going to happen. It's just like a little inkling of a pipe dream. And maybe it would be worse. I don't know. We have what's coming ahead of us. It's too big for, I think, individuals to actually comprehend. Like, to even comprehend the number 70 million people is mind-boggling. That we have 350 million people in this country, it's like too much. I don't think
Yeah.
our brains are meant for those kind of numbers, especially when it comes to human beings.
But here's the thing, if like your vision of this coast seceding, right, gives you some fuel
Right. Mm-hmm.
to fight for what matters, then
Mm-hmm.
like spend time visioning about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I definitely think that, when I come into personal crisis, sometimes the escape plan is where my mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's like conflict in a relationship, right? I'll be like, okay, so if
Yeah.
shit really hits the fan, then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Okay. And then at the end of that, everyone's okay. 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 Okay.
Right.
And then
Right.
that just like gives me the energy to actually deal with what the conflict is. I
Yeah.
don't know that that's healthy necessarily, right? To always have an escape plan. I'm like working on it. But sometimes it's a survival tool.
Yeah.
And I think that
100%.
that's like kind of what I'm hearing from you is that there is something in that vision of like, well, if shit gets really bad,
Yeah.
California, like us here on the West Coast have some economic advantages, and maybe there will be the political will
Mm-hmm.
to create some separation because a country this big was never meant to
Mm-mm.
survive, right? Or whatever.
Too big.
So, yeah, I think everyone has got to, like, that's the call to action right now, is to really figure out, like, what are the things that allow you to feel like you've got the fight in you,
Yeah.
and to also be okay resting,
Yes.
recharging, taking care of yourself and your loved ones when you don't have the fight in you, because hopefully we can all kind of swap out as long
Mm-hmm.
as we don't become too complacent.
Yeah. Yeah. And envisioning what we want in this moment now, as far as like what I keep going back to the Weimar Republic and how I've recommended this in the past, but there is a Netflix documentary called El Dorado that talks
Mhm.
about, in beautiful recreations and beautiful pictures, about the queer nightclubs in Berlin in between the world wars. And it's heartbreaking. You could always check out before the end, but it's also really good to see how all of that went down so that we can resist that should it come to our doorstep. But it is a time for explosive parties, art, performance, visibility. And that's where I feel so empowered in this go around. With this election, is that I got a punk rock attitude of like, now I want to be more in community, more outlandish, more visible, and just with like my middle finger out,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
eat
mean, I
it.
think that the trifecta for me certainly is protest,
Yeah.
art,
Hmm.
and uh, pleasure practices,
Yeah. Self-care, and
you know?
community care,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
and by the way, like I want to do another call out for anyone who's listening that I think it was before the election happened that I offered to listeners that the embodied coaching uh, container practices that I have available, I'm offering 50% off to listeners. So if you're needing some support with regulation, self care, self worth, please like find me on my website. It's just sarahtomchesson.com and message me and let me know you're a listener. And then I'll send you a code and you get 50% off of everything. I'm trying to come up right now with something that's going to be a free offering. I haven't quite, you know, settled on what that's going to be, but that is in my mind that there is going to be some sort of free offering that's coming on a semi-regular basis. I just got to kind of figure out like what kind of space holding I can do with regularity.
Right.
And then, listeners will be some of the first to hear about that.
Yes. And let me just toot your horn for a moment,
Oh,
if you will allow,
okay. You can
because
toot my horn.
I'll toot it good. Um, but as part of your certification, you've had to do a number of practice sessions. And I
Mhm.
have been the very lucky recipient of a number of sessions with you. And let me just tell you, like, I've done so much therapy, which has been very, very beneficial. But this is really unique and different from that, in that it's like, it's much more like in my therapy, it's dealing a lot with things that have happened, whether it's way
Mhm.
back in my past and how it's affecting a situation and stuff like that. And it's a lot of dealing with the past, which I have plenty to deal with in the past. And I appreciate that. I need that work because it was affecting my present so terribly. But a lot of what you were doing was very grounded in this very moment in the present and then looking forward. And you
Mm.
gave me a number of very simple assignments that have had a big impact on my world. I'm telling my therapist about you, you know? And so I just think that you're so good at this kind of work. You're a very
Thank
present
you.
tense kind of person. And I don't know if you have this effect on other people, but I love it when you tell me to do something, and it makes it easier for me to actually do it. So the biggest assignment that you gave me that had the biggest, or not, it wasn't a big assignment. It was a simple assignment, but it gave me so much power in my day to day was we ended up talking about how I, even when I'm alone, censor myself and
Mhm.
unbold myself. I don't know how, but you were like, I want you to go out and every day just do one little thing that's extra, a little bit bold, whatever it is. Just do something bold every day. And to have that permission was, I mean, I got chills thinking about it now. And I think that I've in my life been more bold because of that. And honestly, I think my reaction on some level to this has had influence from that assignment as well. I'm just like, I am not about to cower right now. I feel bold. I do something every day. Like one day it was just yellow eyeliner.
Mhm.
Another day it was like a huge performance that I did that I've been planning, but I was just that much bolder because I had the permission to do that. It was really impactful. So I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity and the funds and everything, to seek out Sarah, because it was great. I love it, and we have one
Yeah.
left, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited for our closing ritual. Um, for our 5 sessions that we did together. I was in a pretty immersive, intensive coaching program, like getting coached,
Yeah.
when we were on break from the podcast.
Hmm.
And the thing I love about coaching is that it is more action oriented
Mm-hmm.
than therapy. I also, having been in therapy for a very long time, it's been really helpful to me, but I also hit a wall a bit in that the action orientation plus the accountability, because when you have
Mm-hmm.
this container, right, of someone that you've reached a point where you're like, I need support in this area or for this goal, or working on my self-confidence or whatever it is, you have the guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're kind of like, okay, we're working together. My job as a coach is to help you towards your goal,
Mm-hmm.
and I give you tools to do that. But then for me, also then having the accountability to come back into the container,
Yeah.
because when, like, sometimes I know the stuff I need to do that would help me, but it's
Right.
just like,
Yeah.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's this other level that's really wonderful is that you even help discover what the goal is,
Mhm, mhm.
because it's very oriented towards getting grounded, embodied, and then speaking to your subconscious through meditation and imagery to even drum up what the true goal even is. I consider myself a bold person. I think most people would be like, she's bold as shit. Why does
Yeah.
she need more permission to do that? And it's because I let out the boldness that I'm trying to keep in, like you're seeing like it
Mhm.
eking out, but it's
Yeah,
like, why
yeah,
not just let the full force,
yeah.
I am a fluorescent, bold color, that I'm trying to pass myself off like I'm like beige. Like, no, thank you, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
What's
yeah.
so interesting is to think of you as fluorescent and then
Hmm.
like all this black
All this
that you've,
black.
because actually black is like a very damp, I mean, I'm wearing
Yeah.
black right now
Yeah.
too, but it
Hmm.
is actually very dampening, you know?
Yes.
So, and you are fluorescent. I love that
I have
description of
said
you.
before that I mean, there's many reasons why I love black, but part of why I like it is because I'm actually the one that's colorful. When I
Right,
wear
right,
bright
right.
colors, I think because my skin is so pale and everything, I feel like it makes me look dampened. But it's like
Mm, mhm,
I'm
mhm,
the
mhm.
colorful part of this situation, like my physical
Yeah.
body.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
the
Yeah.
contrast too. It's like it doesn't this white. I'm a black and white, but also bold. Anyway, so, yes, here we are in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is I'm glad where we got to, because I was
Yes.
concerned. Like, I know a lot of us have some fear and some venting to do
Mhm.
around what's happening right now. But I didn't want to just come on here and dump
Yeah.
about that, because I don't think that that's helpful to the listeners, or really to me, to be
Right.
honest. Right. So I loved going on this journey with you.
This was good. I feel like, I mean, if we had recorded an episode in 2016, it
Hmm.
would just be a puddle of despair and tears.
Yep.
Um, and so, I mean, I don't even know where to end it, but I am glad that we're in this spot where we are disappointed,
Hmm.
maybe even still devastated, but not unempowered.
Yep.
They do not control us. We are not this decision, we are many things. There's a whole world. There's jungles out there. You're in one right now.
I know.
There's a lot going on besides this. And even within it, we can find a lot of joy and power and vision for the future that is a lot less bleak than
Yeah.
what our national platform is telling us.
And it's going to come through connection with the
Yes.
people that really matter most to us, who are in the
Yes.
fight with us.
And with
Um,
yourself,
yep. Yep.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right. And we are here for you guys. We would love to know what you all are thinking. What's your
Mm.
take on the election? You can email us at fyapod@gmail.com or DM us through our TikTok or Instagram or even threads, which is fuck yeah pod. or at Fuck Yeah Pod. Let's be in communication. And if you send us an email, we're going to read it. You send us
Yep.
a voice message, we might even play it. So,
Mhm,
let us know
mhm.
where you're at. Let's keep the conversation and let's be in community with each other and support each other. What are you doing to get yourself through this time? Or how are you connecting through your community in the wake of this, whatever the fuck?
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Fiercely Independent Media. Fuck Yeah Podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by Robin Jennings and Sarah Tom Chesson, also known as my mom. Theme music by Suno AI. Your support means a lot. You can give to the show and receive perks at patreon.com/fuckyeahpod. You can also rate and review the show or share it with a friend. You can reach us at fyapod@gmail.com. Bye for now.